Section 5.2 Exponents. Objective 1 Simplify with exponents. So here we have all the rules of the exponents. Very important. But through the semester we kind of already touched on these rules but not have specifically talked about them. So please be sure to copy them down, go over them a couple times. But for the most part, you guys already know how to simplify with exponents. So example 1, simplify each of these. Alright, let's start off with A. Alright, so we have 2x to the 0 power times y to the negative third power, and that's all to the power of negative 2. So before we work with anything, we want to do order of operations, and then you notice when we have negative exponents, we can't use those. That's what comes last. We're going to flip that last. So remember, do your PEMDAS, get everything simplified, then flip the negatives. So here we have 2 to the power of 1, because right here, anything to the power of 0 is just 1. And then we have y to the negative third, all to the power of negative 2. Now from here, we can go ahead and distribute this power of negative 2. So we have 2 times 1, which is just 2. So 2 times the power of negative 2 is 2 to the power of negative 2. And then we have y to the power of negative 3 times the power of negative 2. And that gives us y to the power of 6. See how it changes positive? That's why we don't flip it until the end, because we have a positive exponent that comes from that. So still want to simplify. We need to bring this down to the bottom because we can't have that negative. So all we're going to do is just move it to the bottom. So now we have, well, y to the 6 on top, and then 2 to the power of 2 would be 4. So all we did was just make that 4. But we switched it to the bottom because of that negative power. Now, it's not negative 4, it's just going to be positive 4. The negative just means we need to switch it to the bottom. Alright, moving on to part B. So we have x to the power of negative 5 over x to the power of negative 2, and that's all to the power of negative 3. So just like we did before, we need to distribute, use PEMDAS, simplify as much as you can, and then you flip if it's negative. So remember, when we have a fraction, we distribute the exponent to both top and bottom. So we have x to the power of 15 over x to the power of 6, and then we can go ahead and simplify this to 9, so all we have left is x to the power of 9. Alright, part C. So we have 3 over 2, all to the power of negative 2. So just like before, we need to distribute the negative exponent and the exponents before we flip anything. So this goes to top and bottom. So now we have 3 to the power of negative 2 over 2 to the power of negative 2. And since they're both negative, we're going to flip them. So we have 2 to the power of 2. Oops, wrong color. So we have 2 to the power of 2 over 3 to the power of 2. And we can simplify that to 4 over 9. Alright, part D. Alright, so we have 6 to the power of negative 2 times x to the power of negative 4 times y to the power of 10 all over x squared times y to the power of negative 6. So again, remember, we need to simplify as much as we can, and then we're going to start flipping things. But there's no exponents on the outside. There's nothing that we need to combine, just like part C, where we had to distribute that -2 exponent. There's nothing to do that here. So we can go ahead and flip things how we want to. So remember, everything that's negative needs to be flipped. So we're left with, on the top, y to the power of 10, and then y to the power of 6. That's what's all left on top. On the bottom, we have 6 to the power of 2, x squared, x to the 4th, and that's it. Now we want to combine like terms. So we have y to the power of 16. We have 6 squared, which is 36. And then x squared and x to the 4th is x to the 6th. We cannot do any simplifying here, so that is our final answer. Alright, last one, part E. Alright, so we have 3 to the power of -2 times a cubed times b all over 3 to the power of -4 times a to the 7th times b to the power of -2, and that's all to the power of -2. So just like before in previous examples, we need to distribute that -2 before we move any negatives to the bottom or the top. So we're going to distribute this to everything. So we have 3 to the power of -2 times -2 is 3 to the power of 4. A cubed times -2 is a to the power of -6. And then b to the power of -2. And that's all over 3 to the power of 8, a to the power of -14, and b to the power of 4. Now we want to move things to the top and to the bottom and make sure that there is nothing left that's negative. So we have a to the -6 going down and b to the -2 going down, and we have a to the power of -14 going up. So we have 3 to the power of 4 on top and a to the power of 14. And on the bottom we have 3 to the power of 8, a to the 6th, and b to the 4th. Oh, and I forgot to move that b to the 2 down. There we go. Knew I was forgetting something. Alright, now let's simplify the letters. And we can also simplify the numbers, because 3 to the power of 4 is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And then 3 to the power of 8 is 3 times 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 3. And remember, we can cancel ones out that are alike. So we can cancel out that one, that one, that one, that one. So we're left with nothing on top for the 3's, and we're only left with 3 to the power of 4 on the bottom. So we have no 3's left on top. We have 4 3's left on the bottom. We can also cancel out the a's, 6 and 14, so we're left with a to the 8th. And we're going to combine the b's. So we have a to the 8th left on top. And then on the bottom we have b to the 4th and b squared. That leaves us with b to the 6th. Simplify some more, because 3 to the power of 4 is 81, so we have a to the power of 8 over 81 times b to the power of 6.